Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is I, Emily Sophia, here to break down for you guys the latest episode of Bates Motel. We are on Season 3, Episode 2, and spoiler alert before we dive into the mad thick of things, as I will, like always, be bearing all in this review. And I apologize if my vocals are a wee bit on the softer side tonight. I'm going to attempt to express the mayhem and the turmoil that is within my soul without waking up everybody in my house, which will be the task of the century. But I'm gonna try it. And also, when you're done watching this review, hit up the video description because I have a couple of awesome podcasts I would love for you guys to check out. One of them is an interview that I was on the Richmond Filmcast, so give that a look-see. And then also, every Wednesday, Thursday, I'm a part of new weekly web show podcast Mabob under the name of The Waffle Press, so go check that out. But as for now, don't you dare go nowhere because we have serious events and shenanigans to discuss from tonight. So this was a particularly fascinating episode. And I know that everybody is going to have a very singular and unique take on what exactly transpired between all of the characters tonight. So I just encourage you all to behave down there in those comment sections. And also to share all of your diverse and interesting thoughts. Because as I sat here trying to figure out how exactly I was going to tackle this beast of an episode, I realized that there are so many different directions from which we could view what happened tonight. Between Norman and Norma, between Norman and Emma, between Dylan and Caleb, and freaking Norma and Romero, and there was just so many dynamics that we got to witness tonight. And above all, some of the most riveting Norman and Norma action that we have seen in a while. In that, what was really crazy about this episode for me was how the tables seemed to turn. All this focus has been, by and large, on the creeping madness of Norman Bates. But what of that is experienced by his dear mother? Now, that is what really takes the cake and the spotlight tonight. And oh man, is Vera Farmiga at her most fabulous when she is booking it through the woods, climbing trees in a full-on party dress to navigate the thorny underworld of White Pine Bay. Yet another one of those. It seems like they're kind of like Gotham. They've got more of an underworld than an overworld, it seems. But anyways, so her fabulousness just shone so abundantly and richly in this episode. It was crazy entertaining. That's for freaking sure. Emotions were running quite high and complex, and we saw both Norman and Norma attempting to have relationships with people their own age. I mean, it's the struggle of the century. This is not a thing to be taken lightly for either of them. And I am very deeply concerned for where both of their tenuous relationships are going to go, especially with how there's this. It's so fascinating, this manipulative side of Norman that has begun to emerge. Fascinating and scary, to be sure. But that scene at the very end, oh no, what is happening to me tonight? Is it a full moon or something? I don't know. Maybe in White Pine Bay it was in that episode. I freaking swear. Anyways, so at the very end, Norman leaves his delightful little date with Emma, and he is traipsing back up the steps to his enormous palace, when all of a sudden she rolls on up with her front end all busted in, hair all in disarray, and she's pretty much torn to shreds. She shows up, cat dragged in, Miss Norma Bates, single-handedly dismantling the freaking bypass. She is the woman of the century, that's for sure. But also, such a tragic moment as Norman is actually the one who's there to comfort Norma in this moment, and it's so reminiscent of that scene where Norman came running back to Norma after the murder of Blair Watson. And this time around, he's the one who's telling her that he's concerned that she's been acting different. And honestly, it seems so manipulative. I mean, there is this deep, abiding, freakish love that exists between them, and to be certain, he can, arguably, at once be going mad himself, while being concerned for his mother, being that she is kind of the center of everything in his universe, everything that is right and wrong. And so it certainly makes sense that he would be so tuned into his mother in this way, but at the same time, it all kind of feels like compensation. You know, when he, like, bursts into her bedroom to tell her that he's getting his life together, he's loving his job, he is racking the grades at school, oh, and he's got himself a new woman. To which Norma responds in a very fitting way, because I knew that she was going to be, to some extent, on some surfacey level, happy to know that Norman has chosen Emma. And honestly, I think that deep down it's because she knows that Emma is, she's not the classic sexual temptress that Norma is so violently repelling and trying to steer Norman away from. And so to some extent, she knows that there's something in this newly forming relationship that she can trust. But at the same time, of course, any relationship that is not fundamentally her and Norman is, on some Freudian level, unwelcome and unwanted. So, as to how long this whole thing between Norman and Emma can go on, I haven't the slightest, because we've already seen so many disturbing turns taken with Norman, and just it's bursting through his every facial expression, everything that's said to him, everything that he is fighting through and giving into. It's all happening in Freddie Highmore's face. And he delivers one hell of a show, and it is all in here, as it is for Vera Farmiga as well. So they are certainly one of the bangingest power couples on TV right now, if I don't say so myself. But at any rate, there's a lot of confusing shenanigans going on here. Norma, by and large, in this episode, is grasping for straws, for control, namely, which is the Norma way. And when she feels that she does not possess complete and total control of a situation, she absolutely loses herself to it, and it consumes her. Especially in this case, because I think that she believes deep down that Norman did kill Miss Watson, and that was a thing. Not to be overlooked by any good mother, but at the same time, all she wants is not to lose Norman, to have him safe, to have him with her forever, you know? And so anything that gets in the way of that nirvana that she strives for, it's not gonna fly. And the fact that Miss Annika Johnson is completely unaccounted for, that to her spells out a grave danger, because it's a way that she can lose Norman, since he's the last one who saw her and who can give any account of her whereabouts, and it's starting all over again. This is her nightmare. And of course, so after she goes to the friggin' sex lodge in the woods and is thankfully sent away by Romero before she can pry further, she was ready to have a full-on conversation with that man in front of the window. Praise the Lord for at least, you know, just a nugget of sense between the two of them. But so she is just completely flabbergasted. She has got nowhere, you know. Getting all dolled up for nothing. Ain't that the classic struggle? You hear me? But so, of course, on her way back home, Miss Norma Armageddon Bates, that is her full name in case you weren't aware, She stumbles across a certain bypass that has loomed ever in the distance, threatening her and Norman's existence by squelching out their livelihood. The one thing that they can cling on to, this facade of sanity and normalcy and this structure, this cohesion. Really, the motel is it's not everything to them, because really they are everything to each other, Norman and Norma. But the motel provides this sacred space in which they can be one together. And if that cannot thrive, if they are taken away from this dream in motion, then, well, and these are all the things that are pressing upon Norma Armageddon Bates' spirit as she comes up to the sign and decides to raise a wee little bit of hell. And I cannot blame her in the slightest. Fair Farmiga, she is a reckoning force in the facial department, as well as in every other possible way. So that was a very refreshing and cathartic scene. Of course, leading up to that final uncanny moment where Norman is trying to make sure that she is all right, and she recognizes the strangeness of that, and I think is finally, for once, taken aback. She is brought to terms with the fact that she really is losing control, that this young man that she has known all his life is peeking into windows, getting into cars with strange women. I love that quote earlier on in the episode where she was saying, like, that, what was it, unhinged women are drawn to you, something to that effect. And oh man, I had me a good laugh. that was comedy gold right there. And yeah, so we see the two of them taking these strange twists and turns and running in parallel and bleeding together, and then brushing shoulders with other people in the world, you know, trying to keep up their basic social status quo. I do believe, of course, that Norman is on some level drawn to Emma, and that he wants this and feels that this could be a safe space for him, that he can try and find a way to conduct himself. And yet this whole conversation that the two of them have at their dinner date is all about sex, which is a major not so great kind of trigger for him at this point in his development as a man and a person and a monster, but can't tell. At any rate, so they get into the whole frickin' Peter Pan and Wendy innuendos. Like, okay, that scene, we need to talk about Freddy's face, because there were so many things happening, so many cylinders firing under his flesh. Like, it was really one of the crazier moments that we've seen from him. Just this, like, this feral desire, or this sense of, like, euphoric, I don't freaking know. But the idea that he can be forever young, or have this Neverland where he doesn't have to completely grow up, but he can still enjoy the perks of adulthood. And that's really kind of this balance that he's striking in his household, with being the ever-loving mama's boy, and yet at the same time coming into his own. Of course, Emma has no idea as to how all of that is manifesting in his mind, and oh lordy, she doesn't know. But at the same time, yeah, it's really a fascinating point that Emma brings up, in trying to be honest with him, and not merely trying to crack his shell, but get to know him on this deep and important level, that this isn't nothing. Which is an interesting, it stands kind of, pardon moi, it stands kind of in stark contrast to what Annika was saying, like, it's just sex, and for Emma, it's not just sex, and it certainly isn't just sex for Norman, who recognizes that it's not a source of magic for him. It's something overwhelming and consuming, And so it's weird to see how kind of these two perspectives on sexuality and sensuality and intimacy collide in this budding relationship between Norman and Emma. And, you know, I'm not sure where that's gonna take them yet. I'm honestly really nervous for that first time that they have with each other, because that is gonna kindle some kind of something, and I really don't want to see anybody blow up right now. Please and thank you. Norma's got enough kindling. I mean, we don't need to tempt fate here. And then we also see more, hands down, the most awkward moment this show has delivered to us was in the form of an almost kiss, almost hug, almost can we totally be a thing showdown between Norma and Romero. So he shows up to thank Norma for all of her services, not in that way, hello. And she tries to refuse, and he this and that and this and that, and then they have this moment, whatever you want to call it. But you think that a mother and son snuggling in bed all night long is awkward? You ain't seen shit, children. Watch and learn from, I can't believe that I actually witnessed that. And there was something that Norma did, like she like put her hands up and then like, whoop, okay, now we're hugging, and oh, face, kiss, and like just, how does that happen? How is that a human interaction? I don't think that I have ever in all of my days borne witness to such a miracle of awkward. It was great, and I love them. I mean, I've always had a thing for Norma and Romero, and I know that is also going to come to fruition at some point. What do you want to bet that, like, things with Norman and Emma are going to escalate over here. Things with Norma and Romero are going to escalate over there. They're going to have a double date, and only 2 people are going to walk out alive from that. So, I'm just saying, theories, you know, take what you will. I'm dying. I am slowly disintegrating. Thank you, show, for ruining me. At any rate, so we also have an interesting side plot with what's happening with Dylan, and honestly, why do they keep taking him away from his family? Because he adds such a fascinating dynamic to the whole thing, and I know 3's a crowd, but he brought such an incredible elements, and he always does whenever he's in the presence of his family. But here he is kind of forced into isolation with his father, who is certainly making himself a little name out there in the woodlands. And then we got the new character of Chick Hogan. Is that his name? And that was a really interesting power play that unfolded there, you know, what with the whole shooting of the dog, and then he shows up looking for some dog, and really the guy's just taking advantage of the whole situation to bring Dylan and Caleb out of the woodwork to test the waters, to see what they're really about, and to show them that, hey, they might not know all the tricks to this trade. And what's really unfortunate is that Dylan is given way too many opportunities to be relegated to the background. Like, Caleb comes out like, oh, we're not doing this, blah, blah, blah. And he and Dylan are on such opposite pages that we know that this tenuous business bond formed between them is not going to work out for long. Because Dylan is, by and large, trying to be accommodating of the situation, and Caleb is pretty much trying to blow it up. I mean, I see that he has that in common with Norma. I really hate to bring up the 2 of them in one sentence because of past events that continue to cast a shadow on the present, but at any rate, so as much as I want Dylan to be back with his family, this whole Caleb situation needs to be dealt with in some way, and I think that Hogan is going to be instrumental in that. Fascinating character. You know, definitely adds to this weird sense of mystery and eccentricity that surrounds and embodies this town. From the sex lodge to the green growth in the woods. Like, there's secrets far and wide here. And man, there's so much to break down and to analyze in this episode, but really the focus was very strongly on Norma and her pursuit of control of her son and control of the people surrounding him, because clearly he has an issue with certain other members of humankind, namely the ladies. And Norma is doing everything that she can to ensure that she has a future, something to cling on to, and Norman has been that, and she will not lose him for anything to anyone, period. Now, we'll see what kind of bearing the bypass has on the future, but I'd say that Norma made a serious dent in things. Kudos to you, my dear. That was quite fabulous. So, by all means, please let me know of anything else that I forgot in the comments. It is so late in the night, but I had to make this review because I am ever in love with this insanity. Please share with me all your theories and thoughts. I'd be happy to read them and to, you know, take it to the comments. We will do some business there. So thank you guys once again so much for watching. Anything else that I forgot to mention, I know that I did. Bring it on downtown, okay? And as always, I will be back before you know it.